Hello and welcome to MacFormat's weekly Apple Extravaganza. I'm Chris Finn.
I'm Matt Bolton.
And on this episode we talk about Apple doing too much.
More Windows.
And we also talk about a very clever little storage solution for your Mac. Let's start with news from the world of Apple. Now I don't want to flat out say Apple's been a bit shit recently. So I'm not going to flat out say it. But I am going to...
But through gritted teeth you'll mumble or something.
I'm going to present evidence to the court.
Right.
And let the good people decide. Basically, I started to wonder if Apple has the resources to match its ambition.
Well, it's got more money than the rest of the world combined.
It's got more money than gold. Well, it's got money, but you can't just throw money at something to solve it. And you sort of wonder if they've got enough talent and engineers in order to do the things that need to be done and done well.
Yes, it's a skills resource issue, perhaps.
Rather than the money resource issue.
If there is an issue, my lad.
So, recent mistakes, slip-ups, if you like, include iCloud Drive. Now, iCloud Drive in and of itself isn't a mistake, but the fact that iOS 8 launched before macOS 10, year 17,
10.10,
yeah, meant that we're currently in an interregnum, a period where if you were foolish enough to tap the button that says upgrade to iCloud Drive when you're setting up your iOS 8 device, you now can't sync.
Yes. And you may have lost some stuff?
Unlikely you've lost some stuff, but there's another fuck up in iOS 8, which is that if you tap the Erase All Contents and Settings button, it deletes your iCloud documents. Right. From the cloud, from everything. They go. It's gone. You've also got...
It does say erase all content.
Well, sorry. Yes,
I know it's not supposed to,
yes.
but
you had I mean, this is a bad example, but you had the stream for the keynote, which was
that was boned.
Messy. It didn't feel Apple at all to have something so high profile and to be so bad.
Yeah.
And to be so consistently bad as well. It basically didn't really solve itself.
No, not at all.
Throughout the whole thing, which is all bad. And you've got a tough few months ahead as well, because you've got Yosemite coming out, you've got iCloud Drive finally coming out, you've got Apple Pay launching, at least in the States. That's a big deal. You can't screw that up.
No.
And you've also potentially got new Macs coming out as well.
Maybe.
With possibly the Retina iMac.
Maybe. Yes, maybe.
No, I mean genuinely maybe.
Yeah, but as long as they've already got the software stuff sorted out, if they do, then the Macs I wouldn't be so worried about. I mean, they haven't faltered on hardware in a while. Yeah. Let's just gloss over Bendgate completely as an argument for or against that. So I wouldn't be worried about that as long as they can get the stuff that is currently ballsed to be not ballsed.
Yeah.
The iCloud Drive thing is more of a logistical failing than a software failing. But it's also... I can see on your notes you've got iOS 8.0.1.
Yes.
That was just a complete screw up. It broke things.
Yes, when you applied iOS 8.0.1 on iPhone 6s and iPhone 6 Pluses, you lost the ability to connect to the cellular network, and that's a major failing.
iCloud Drive strikes me as it's a logistical issue. We're launching iOS 8 ahead of Yosemite for whatever reason. Server load, Yosemite isn't ready. All sorts of reasons there could be to build it up.
Yeah.
But we've got this new feature that can't come in until the other one launches. How do we deal with it? I think they did it wrong.
Yes.
I think it shouldn't have even been in iOS 8.0.
Yep.
They should have done an planned iOS 8.1 or something
to coincide with
Yosemite launch.
But also, you say some reasons you think that could happen, but one of the big things, of course, is that at the moment, iOS launches in particular are tied to product hardware launches.
Yes.
And I think it was John Gruber was calling for, should we begin to think about decoupling that relationship so that the hardware and software can be launched independently. Now that obviously it feels messy from the outside. But it might be a way of allowing the teams to work dependently. Now, there was a really good article ages ago talking about the fact that Apple allows itself to miss deadlines. The thesis was Apple will set itself deadlines for projects, but if it gets close and it knows it's not going to be able to do it, it will allow itself to push it back. And it seems like it hasn't been doing that recently. It seems it has been just saying, we'll do this, and then just doing it come hell or high water. And part of the QA process seems to be faltering as a result.
Yeah, I guess there's a question of whether that's come into things like when they relaunched iWork with the new versions of Pages and everything, and it was missing a bunch of features, and they came out and said, don't worry, we'll add these features. And you think, could you have waited a month and just added the features and launched something that people would have complained about less? Yes, I wonder if there's a cultural shift in the new Apple that is leading to this.
The corollary, of course, is that as a public, we don't want Apple to do less. We want Apple actually to do more.
Yes.
We want Apple to be constantly innovating. Apple is driven by that hunger. But
I would like my stuff not to be fucked up.
Yeah.
So
sounds like a plan. Let's move on to the wider world of tech.
Strange decisions that have come out of the wider world of tech this week. There's been one key one, which is not the fact that Microsoft is launching another Windows. That's a somewhat predictable decision.
One would imagine.
Well, I mean, some might say it is, but it's called Windows 10. They have completely skipped Windows 9.
Because 789. If I've seen that joke once on Twitter, I've seen it a million bloody times.
But I have seen it a million times.
Yeah.
But that's strange. Have you seen the reason someone has said why that too many developers have put in their code if to identify the version, if version starts with Windows 9, to identify versions Windows 95 and 98.
Right. Okay.
Because that will pull them both in. And someone said, no, that's not true. Of course, that's silly. You identify by other things. But someone did a search on somewhere. I don't think it was GitHub, but it was somewhere like it for this code. If version starts with Windows 9, thousands and thousands of results.
Which could cause things to break irreparably.
You'd be getting all sorts of weird software calls for legacy stuff instead of the modern stuff. So
let me just do that.
Who knows if that's true?
Yep.
But it's a strange decision either way. Especially as some people have pointed out, it's called Windows 10. It's a nice big round number. That it's going to be a nice big round new operating system that operates on everything from Internet of Things devices to your desktop and your tablet and whatever. And someone pointed out, and like entertainment devices. Someone pointed out, why don't you call it Windows 1? You already have the Xbox One.
So ONE.
Yeah. That would have made a lot of sense.
Yes.
Windows 10 doesn't.
No.
Really. But hey, that's what it's called.
Yeah, and
we'll live with it.
I guess a lot of the thinking, at least that sort of once people sort of ruminated on it for a while, which is like the point is to sort of signal a break from the evolution that's happened.
It's a weird bit, like it's such a direct signalling of a break, which is skipped one. Yeah, like it's such a weird.
But I think that the problem is that obviously Vista was a hideous disaster, at least in PR terms. Nobody wanted it, and then 7 basically fixed Vista. Yeah, and then 8 tried to innovate. And it's like it's not a tablet, it's not a desktop, it's both. It's okay, you can have both. And then 8.1 came out that brought the start bar back, the start button back. And then with Windows 10, they've basically taken Metro, the tiley interface from Windows 8, and gaffer taped it onto the start menu. Yeah,
a little bit, at least the live tiles stuff. But it will apparently, if you're on a touch interface. So one of the things it will do is dynamically change the Windows interface depending on the device and the interaction method you're on. So instead of one interface that you have to somehow navigate on both, it's if you're on a touch device, the start area becomes larger, and instead of the start menu, you've got something akin to the old Metro interface. Whereas if you're on a mouse, you've got a small start button, and it's got a list of stuff as well as the tiles. I think that seems more reasonable solution than what they were doing before, than one interface for both interaction methods. You think that was better?
No, but the thing is, I think Apple's doing it right, because what Apple's done, of course, is to have a pure and absolute mobile operating system and a pure and absolute desktop operating system, and to use the cloud to bridge the gap, and to use handoff and continuity in iOS 8 and Yosemite, so that you are absolutely using the right tool for the right job at the right time, rather than trying to make every tool do everything not especially well.
Yes. One of the interesting things is part of that new dynamic thing is going to be that Microsoft's own apps are kind of like reactive websites. They reflow and reformat depending on how big you make the window. So if you make it quite narrow in like the mail, then you'll just see your messages. As you expand, it'll add in a second pane when it thinks it's wide enough. Or
that sounds like a pane. Do you think, like, I'm being flippant, obviously, but and I can see the sense to it, and obviously responsive websites have been around for a little while, they make a lot of sense. But the idea that your interface is constantly shifting beneath your feet.
Well, it's not constantly shifting.
But, like...
It's not like the windows just change size automatically while you're trying to click and you're chasing it around the screen.
The thing is, you and I would be fine with that interface, but I suspect people who are less comfortable with computers, there'll be a lot of lucrative business to be made of tech support for people who say, "Where's my send mail button gone?" because I can't see it.
Well, that's where Microsoft's going to have to make all its money now, so it's fine.
So it's well planned.
It's a perfectly good business
on their idea.
Business concept.
It is weird though. The fact that they're skipping 9, it's just like. Because a lot of people, obviously, if you think back, wanted, or rather assumed that Apple wouldn't do OS 10 10.10, because if you take a strict decimal view of it, obviously 10.10 is 10.1. And they thought they would do something completely different, and they didn't. And Apple just wouldn't look like that. It doesn't matter. It's just 10.10. Shh.
Yeah.
And yet Microsoft has kind of seemed to have had a bit of a hissy fit and gone, okay, we're going to do something really big and dramatic to mark this change.
It's funny. The crazy naming scheme that Windows has always had, but Xbox, apart from Xbox itself being kind of a crap name, they've always done really clever stuff with the naming systems. I mean, the Xbox was just called the Xbox and it was just stupid, but then so was the PlayStation and the Game Boy. Basically every games console name for the last I don't know how long has been crap. But naming it the Xbox 360 was brilliant. It was so clever because the problem was you were going to have the Xbox 2 versus the PlayStation 3, and 3 is one better than 2.
Yep.
And it was just a psychological loss. So how can we fix it? Well, we need to somehow sound equivalent to the PlayStation 3. We can't just skip to the Xbox 3, although now I'm surprised they didn't.
There were probably discussions.
But they came up with a perfectly reasonable name that made it not sound behind at all, and then they've had the same problem this time, and a lot of people said the Xbox One was a stupid name. I think it's a perfectly reasonable name. They're in a marketing dilemma, and I think they've handled it really well in the Xbox line, and this seems kludgy, especially when you can argue the Xbox One already gave them quite an elegant point, especially if they want to be producing an all-in-one ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's move on to our kit for this week. Alright, this little thing here is the Drobo Mini.
Yes.
Filled with SSDs, no less.
It's a tiny Drobo.
It's a tiny Drobo. Now, Drobo I love. I bought a Drobo with my own cash money and I use it every day. It's a little expensive as a system to get into because the basic idea is that in most cases you buy the bare drive, you buy the bare chassis, and you fill it with drives. But unlike with traditional RAID systems, so you put drives in and it can mirror your data, or it can stripe your data, or it can do a mixture of that with RAID 5 and RAID 10 and all the different variants of RAID there are. The problem with that is it fills up, and when it's full, what you going to do? With the Drobo, the nice thing is you stick a couple of drives in. There's usually 4 bays or 5 bays in the more sort of consumer ones. You stick a couple of drives in, your data is redundant, so if one drive fails, it's not a problem. Once you fill that, you pop another drive into the 3rd bay. Once you fill that, put a drive into the 4th bay. What then? I hear you prompt me to tell a story about. The thing then is that you take the lowest capacity drive out, stick a higher capacity drive into that, and the storage space just increases and increases and increases. Very, very clever.
And it's not RAID.
That's not RAID.
It's its own system.
It's its own system, which I think actually is probably based on some sort of magic noodling with some RAID standards, but it is its own system for dealing with the data.
And it's brilliant because I've seen people be playing an HD film from a Drobo, open the front and start pulling out drives, and
as
the
we
film
shall do
doesn't
now.
even stutter.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I can just pop a drive out here, and in a second the Drobo will realise what's happened, and it'll start freaking out. No, it won't start freaking out. What it'll do is it'll basically, one of the little green lights that were around the edge here will go red because it'll say you've a drive has failed or been removed here. So you just pop another one in, and as you see, you don't miss a beat. Absolutely, you don't miss a beat.
Because of the way the data is distributed.
Yeah, and if one of the drives was becoming full, it would go orange, so you'd know which drive to pop out and put another one in. And even the case that, as I say, this is currently filled with SSDs, but you could easily, if one of the SSDs fails and you're in a bind, you could whack in a 2.5-inch hard disk in there. And it's not a problem. And that's one of the other great things with the Drobo, because with traditional RAID systems, which are often very much based on performance, you match the drives exactly. It's not even just the case that you match the capacities, but you match the manufacturer and the spindle speed and the caches and everything so that the performance is balanced. With the Drobo, one of the lovely things is you can just chuck any old thing in there and it will just deal with it. Now, admittedly, that's at a slight performance cost, but it is fantastic. And it's also really nice because whichever is the highest capacity hard disk currently being produced, there's always a premium for that particular capacity. Is it 4 terabytes just now? Or is it 5? I can't remember, I've lost track. But whichever the biggest hard disk is, it's always more per gigabyte than the next one down. But if you've got a Drobo system, of course, you can whack in the next one down and just build it up and build it up and build it up. So while they're quite expensive to buy initially, they pay for themselves in a sense in the long run.
The fan on it is starting to kick up, I notice.
Well,
I hope it doesn't affect the microphone.
It's true. It should be okay. There's 2 fans in the back which are exhausting out this way, so we should be okay. It's generally pretty quiet, it has to be said. It's only ramping up now because it's having to shunt data around a little bit to deal with the fact that I've popped this out. Let's pop this back in. That way around. Can I do this? Yes, I can. So to buy it, bare is 285 quid.
And then
that's with nothing in it.
Then you've got to fill it with drives. Now, we've got it filled with SSDs.
Yep.
That's going to cost a lot.
Yeah. It's annoying actually because in the States they sell this as a bundle with these drives in it. In the UK they don't at the moment. So you have to spec it up yourself, in which case you're adding, for this configuration, which is 4 512 gigabyte SSDs, cost you £720 for those. But remember, again, you don't have to fill it with 4 from the get-go. You can just start popping them in one at a time, which is very clever. And it connects either over Thunderbolt, and there's a pass-through port on the back as well, or via USB 3. And over Thunderbolt, we're looking at peak speeds of 530 megabytes per second.
Is it Thunderbolt 2?
I don't think so, no.
In fact, if that's the peak, it doesn't need to be.
So it's not super fast, but fast enough. Tom, if you come round here, there's one thing I want to show the folks at home, which is this power connection here, which is very clever. When you put this power cable in, you can then twist it, which locks it in place, so you can't just yank it out, which is very clever. You don't want, it's very important with storage stuff, especially with storage stuff that's dealing with data. Although with Drobos there's usually a little bit of internal power, a little battery, reserve, so that if the power does go, it will can finish writing the data that we're dealing with and not just completely screw it. On the Mac you have the Drobo dashboard, which allows you to do a bunch of things. Tom, can you see the screen? So this allows you to obviously look at the status for what you're doing. You can see at the moment I've popped a drive in, so it's doing data protection. You can see the capacity. Now you do obviously lose capacity with these 4 drives. With a single drive redundancy failure, you get about 1.3 terabytes. So there's 2 terabytes worth of storage in here, but the amount you are allowed is about 1.3 because the rest of that is used for the redundancy.
Yeah.
But you can also switch it to dual disk redundancy, so you can lose 2 drives. Again, storage space comes down. One of the other nice things you can do, of course, if you're using a Drobo for Time Machine, it would just fill, but the Drobo dashboard allows you to hive off an area and say there's 250 gigabytes, say, for Time Machine, and there's that little protected area.
Okay.
Which is really clever.
Yes, it is.
Good.
I didn't realise it needed my approval.
I think it's a really nice little thing. There's a full review that's coming in MacFormat, but as a general rule, I'm a big fan of the Drobo system. I think it's a really clever thing. And the problem is, I think they haven't sold terribly many of them. We got sent a press release from them, very excitedly talking about the fact that they'd sold, was it 50,000?
Don't remember.
Units of all Drobos, which is quite a small number.
Well, they seem happy.
They seem happy with it, and the thing is, I really wish it does well. It's a really good little thing, and I would like more people to buy them because I think they're really worth it.
They are, as storage goes, a bit premium, but they're a bit good.
Yeah.
So that we do recommend them generally, and you'll see how much we recommend this one.
in the next issue of MacFormat. Let us know what you think of all the stuff we've talked about in the comments below. Apple, of course, do you think it is trying to do too much? Does it need to slow the pace down and just do things better rather than do more things? Windows 10, does it strike you as preposterous as it strikes us that Microsoft is just ignoring version 9, and from a purely marketing perspective it would seem just deciding to call the product Windows 10 does not matter a damn because you don't care about Windows. And this little thing as well. Have I convinced you of the benefits of these little drives? Do you think I'm talking ridiculous money for what is, in a sense, an external hard disk? Let us know in the comments below.
Don't forget, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/MacFormatUK. You can watch any of the previous episodes of the Extravaganza, and you can get a free trial of the wonderful interactive iPad edition of MacFormat at macformat.com/iPad.
So that's it for this week. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
The tension.
Sorry.
It's so hot in here.